I do think, Darren, and thank you for picking up on that. And that was a really good recollection, considering how long ago it was. I do say that, in the face of adversity, that's when you see the best of humanity. The coming together is all about appreciating that we all have a gift of equal value to bring to the party. That's the first thing. So that, that really relates to neurodivergence and what they might bring to the party. So that leveling of the field, no hierarchy, no politics, no rank. It's just everyone has got something to bring to the party. When you put what you can bring to the party together, that's when you feel the effect of collaboration. And I believe that the only thing you need in order for collaboration to work really well is either a shared goal or a shared enemy. That's it. And I'm going to give you the example when the pandemic hit, that feeling when you're out on the streets, clapping for the NHS and the support workers and all that kind of thing, that feeling of camaraderie, that feeling that you're connected somehow to people on all corners of the planet with a feeling, with love, with support. That's an incredible thing. And that's the thing that once you've tasted, once you've felt, you never want to let go of. So you're always going to be chasing that. So that's why collaboration is really, really important to me, Darren.
Talk about kind of light bulb moments of when I got diagnosed, or I always knew that there was something, because of the kind of the work that you do in that sense. What was that kind of like for yourself? Was it kind of realization? Was it?
Yeah, it was complete affirmation. It was, I kind of gathered this. I spent 20 years since the tsunami. I've spent like 20 years being a behavior expert, understanding how we tick, understanding where that comes from, and seeing the results in the analyses that I create. And if you look at my results in my own report, you'll see they're very polar. Now, and then having worked with people on neurodiversity like Dr. Linda Shaw, I remember Linda said to me one day, Michelle, you can't do this and that at the same time. I'm going, yeah, I can. And she's like, well, you probably can't. And I'm like, but I do. And she said, well, you might want to look at that, Michelle. And that was the trigger for me that said, do you know what? If I am neurodivergent, that would make so much sense to everything. So I actually went through my private insurance in order to get it. But when I got that diagnosis, there was such a sense of relief. It's like, oh, that makes so much sense. And now I can go and show young adults and other people that it's not a disability, that you can still achieve. And I just wanted to be able to go out and turn that narrative on its head for starters.
Where do you think the narrative has come from when we talk about, we tend to think of the narrative, say take dyslexia, for instance. If we're looking we're Googling, dyslexia, it tends to come up with what the problems are, as in, which is right, when we say this. But there is a lot of negative connotations on this. And then we have to kind of script it in the sense of saying, well, actually, I feel the parallel sometimes is a little bit too far from, say, someone who is struggling in school, for instance, or struggling in their workplace, to you could be the next Richard Branson. And we're talking someone who's struggling to take the information from the board or whatever it is that they need to be doing, to them the potential of being, a multi-billionaire. Now, I'm not saying, not stamping on anyone's, progress, but sometimes I think, again, just from my narrative, that we miss the middle bit.
You're absolutely right, and I think that's the same with a lot of things. As a society, globally as a society, I think that when we discover something, then we suddenly realise how wrong we've been doing it. For instance, calling dyslexia and ADHD and other neurodivergent conditions as mental disorders, it's right there on Google. That's your first step. We've been doing this wrong for so long. But then what happens is we bounce forward into this wonderful world of unicorns and rainbows where everything is a superpower, and then what happens after a period of time is we find the comfortable place in the middle that allows us to move forward as a society. That's how I see it. So I see this as being this huge surge of understanding. So many people are saying, oh, well, why is it trendy to be neurodivergent? It's not trendy. It's just we've had a massive awareness and awakening. And yeah, that's going to cause some people to go to the top and drive that kind of superpower thing forward, which I do as well, I must admit. But we can't. You're right. We can't forget the middle. We've got to find that middle ground. It can't be either side. It's got to be somewhere in the middle.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I look at, being in the kind of, I use terminology like being in the sector, which I shouldn't use in that sense. But I guess my own diagnosis at the age of 36, I guess that was my journey to start thinking about, what does this look like? And I see, like, I think of them as kind of mavericks, really. The people that were really kind of championing it before it became, I guess, global news in the sense now, I guess dyslexia, the way I've seen it is that we've had the kind of the awareness around dyslexia for quite some time, and now it's kind of the media is talking a lot about kind of ADHD, and I still feel there's the kind of dyspraxia and dyscalculia that doesn't seem to have as much limelight. I know it's crazy when we start thinking about the words limelight for these for neurodivergent, but I feel if will there come a time when we've gone from dyslexia to ADHD, and now dyscalculia will get more of an reckoning, ADHD will get dyspraxia will get more of an understanding. I just don't know if it's working on cycles. I mean, it would be amazing if we could collectively be everyone on the same par.
Yeah, and I think it's unrealistic to think that. I think, as we're growing our understanding and realizing that all of these things, or not all of these things, but many of these things are connected. Actually, first of all, I got at 53, I got my diagnosis of massively ADHD. And it's, that's a long time coming, believe me. But you look back and you think, oh my gosh, yeah, I do have dyscalculia, and I know that I have, and that's why I never touch the finances, because I literally get everything mixed up, and I take it all the way back to my exams at school, and I'm thinking, how can one child, which I was a child at the time taking my O levels, how can you get an A in your English language O level and a U ungraded in mathematics? Why then were the teachers not going, hold on a minute, you can't be that polar, there is something that we are doing that is not supporting this individual, there's something amiss here. So I think we are in a much better place as we learn about these things to be able to support young people and adults, through their understanding. I look back now and I think, when I was very, very small, I'm looking at things and I'm thinking, well, that's Tourette's, and it's all connected to ADHD. So there are elements that, and I think the labels is one thing it's really difficult. You've got to try and have more fluid labels, I think,
With that, do you think we so I would say I have dyslexia and I have ADHD. That's what I would say. But like we just mentioned, there is kind of traits of probably autism, dyspraxia, dyscalculia. But we tend to go for, when we talk about these things, we tend to go straight in with one thing and then maybe branch off to the other thing and dilute the other things. Is there a thought pattern behind that, of that, or is it because we can't, I guess, naturally just go, well, I'm. Is there a kind of a human behavior around this? Why you would lead for one, or you feel that one would have more of an effect? I don't know.
I think you're spot on with. You're so intuitive anyway, Darren, and that's part of your superpower. That deep empathy, that brilliant communication. It's just natural. It's part of you. But yeah, I think it is human behavior. We tend to want to pigeonhole because it's almost like we've got a filing system in our head, and when you deliver information to someone else, I used to say this in sales, and I've always said it. The person that you're talking to has got a kind of letterbox shaped hole in their head, and they can only fit in what you deliver to them. So to a certain extent, we need those files in order to say, where do we fit? Where's the strategy? But actually, it's so much more complicated when you delve down. You know, the fact that the comorbid conditions that we are now seeing, and realizing that actually somebody that has an addiction, or somebody that has, you know, an incredibly strong habit, actually a lot of that can be connected to the lack of dopamine, and, you know, and therefore it's just incredible the way that it branches out. But you can't immediately go from zero understanding to 100%. So I think it's like water that's finding its way through an empty stream, you know, and it's filling it up, and it's finding the roots, and it's putting it all together, and at one point in time in the future, it will become an ocean or a pond, you know, where we're all connected, and we understand that connection a little bit more.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. Well, when we talk about neurodivergent, and we think of you know, terminology kind of people pleasing, and is that something that and the kind of sensitivity disorder in that sense, is this something that I can relate to massively, in the sense that if I feel like I've upset someone, or if I've done, you know, upset someone, not willingly upset someone, but if I've, you know, I don't know, in any way, shape or form, and sometimes I haven't upset someone, it just feels like I would think to myself, I have. Do you think that's something that's more neurodivergent, or is that just a human behavior, or is it more amplified for someone like me, I guess?
So, okay, so I am not a neurodivergent expert, and I say that I have a little group on Facebook, Neurodivergent Speakers, and in that group I've got some amazing specialists, you know, like Matt Gutwell and Charlie Hart, and, you know, so many experts. And I'm not an expert. I'm very much on that journey of realization, but I'm just in a good place to be able to talk about experiences and what I see as a human behavior expert. So let me just explain what human behavior is. First of all, so working with Dr. Leori Fern-Pollack, she's a biopsychologist, and we did some work together, and it's great because I just come up with an idea and say, this is what it is, and Leori will say, no, hold on a minute, before you go off spouting it, let's just check the evidence and see how that fits. And we came up with an analogy together that I think really explains what behaviour is. So if you imagine that we've all got the same organs in our brain, the way that we have a bus that drives around the different organs in the brain in order for us to make our decisions, to communicate, and all the rest of it. However, because we're all different, we all have a different bus driver. Now, whereas your bus driver might go to A for a little bit, and then to B, and then stop off and pick up Mabel, and then go back to the depot, mine's going to go all around the Wrekin and have a look at the views and forget to pick up Fred. And, you know, but actually my route is different because my bus driver is different. Now, when you do someone's behaviour profile, what we are doing is looking at your behaviour throughout the day, which we could explain as a feature film, and we're literally taking a snapshot of your most likely behaviour. It is not a label that you can hide behind for the rest of your life. It is a guide as to this is your most likely behaviour. When we look at neurodivergence and behaviour, it's chicken and egg, you know, they are completely connected. So when I look at someone's behaviour profile, I can see the potential neurodiversity, which is what led me to create Illuminator, which actually captures that very clearly. So in answer to your question, it is absolutely human behaviour, but human behaviour is to do with the way that we use our brain, and that is connected. You know, people that are neurodivergent will use their brain in a different way to people that aren't.
I love that analogy, and I don't know if that's when someone gives me an analogy, you know, like this, like a bus driver in this, like an action in that sense, it really kind of draws me in because I can instantly connect with that. And I don't know if that normally works with, you know, when you're kind of at a lecture or something, or someone's giving you kind of the highbrow kind of, which is great, that information. Where if someone was to, my learning, for instance, when you give analogies like this, straight away, it's a full understanding. So I really appreciate your answer on this. I'm just going to share Charlie Hart, who does absolutely incredible work in this field. And Charlie Hart mentions, in the comments, she said, I think people pleasing is more of a trauma response than a neurodivergent thing, although we are more vulnerable to trauma, to all of is indirectly linked, but also hyper empathy, mostly thought of an autistic trait. Thank you so much for sharing that, Charlie, and doing incredible work on this side of it.
I have to put in there, Darren, and just tell you that Charlie Hart is not only a beautiful person, but she's also a finalist in this year's Women's Awards in her category.
And well deserved. Absolutely well deserved. So thank you for sharing that, Charlie, and thank you for sharing that, Michelle. Michelle, how important do you feel confidence is? Because when we talk about confidence, I'll give you an example. Confidence for me, when I very first our paths met, and I was kind of, I guess, just starting out doing speaking, and when I say speaking, just doing kind of talks on my journey and things. I remember coming to one of your talks, and I thought, and I know we spoke about this before, but I was instantly captivated because of how you share that empathy and you work with the audience, and not say work with the audience, but you understand what their kind of needs is. How important do you feel confidence is? Because from a neurodivergent point of view, confidence sometimes can lack in the environments that we're in. And if for instance, we have someone who's, I guess, gone through school being, not thought of in the sense of, academics and everything else, and continuously suppressed. And then suddenly we have someone who can stand in a room of goodness, how many people, and, from all different beautiful parts of the world. Where did that confidence come from? And how do you, can you bottle it? But how important do you feel that is to be heard?
Do you know what? Nathan Littleton, a very dear friend of mine, he's amazing. He will vouch for this. When you see me on stage, when I'm playing a role, I'm fine. I'm come across as very confident. When I am doing a keynote, because I know my subject inside out, I come across as very confident. I'm not, Darren, and a lot of speakers aren't. If you ask me to go on stage and do something I'm not used to, like the awards that I did with Nathan at his conference last year, I turn into a bag of nerves. And when I won at the comedy night competition, I got up on stage and I was just there. There's no confidence there at all. So to a certain extent, I don't think that people that are confident make good speakers, and the confidence is nothing to do with what you deliver. For me, the journey was being very, very nervous and getting up there and thinking, oh my God, what are people going to think of me? And, are they going to think that I don't know what I'm talking about and all that kind of stuff? Knowing your subject inside out gives you that air of confidence. It's a safe place. But I'm always going to think, does someone think my bum looks big in this? It's always there. So it's smoke and mirrors. When you talk about confidence, it's much, much deeper than that.
Thank you for sharing that. What would you say to someone who's listening to this, either watching it or listening to it on the podcast, in that sense, with that stage where they feel they have a story to share, or they have a voice that they want to kind of share either their journey or what it is they're doing? What would the first steps from again, just purely from your kind of experience or your opinion, what would you think would be the kind of first steps for that?
I think the first step is understanding that your story is so what. Nobody's interested in your story. Some people are going to be interested in your story, but that's not what speaking is about. It's not about telling people your story. That's called therapy. So when you're, when you want to deliver something, you've got to understand how that's going to benefit people. So I always say, and I use this phrase, and please, if anyone wants to use it, that's fair enough, but please credit me for it, because I always say that the story is just the wrapping paper. That's all it is. It's the content that you leave that's the gift inside. So you can't just get up on stage and share your story. There has to be a reason. What is this going to do for people? What are they going to learn from it? How are they going to do things differently through your story? It's not about you. And people that come to me say, oh, Michelle, I want to join the Professional Speaking Association. And I say, great, why? And they say, oh, I'm born to be on stage. I'm brilliant up there and people love me. They're the first people I think are probably not ready. You know, it's not about that. It's about how you can be in service. What difference are you going to make? What difference are your words going to make to people? And until you get that right, don't even bother stepping on stage. It took me more than 12 years to ever talk about what happened to me in the Boxing Day tsunami. I never intended to do so. I only did when I realised that the story was actually a really important piece of wrapping paper to carry the message.
One of the most beautiful things that I heard you mention, is when you mentioned in your talk about the tsunami. You mentioned about how everyone came together, and the communities that came together, and there was no politics, there was no money, there was no change of hands in this. It was I'm not delivering it as adequately as you did, but it was just that it gave me goosebumps just thinking about it. That whole kind of coming together, no hierarchy in this. It was humans, and I love that, how beautifully you've mentioned that before in your talks.
I do think, Darren, and thank you for picking up on that. And that was a really good recollection, considering how long ago it was. I do say that, in the face of adversity, that's when you see the best of humanity. The coming together is all about appreciating that we all have a gift of equal value to bring to the party. That's the first thing. So that, that really relates to neurodivergence and what they might bring to the party. So that leveling of the field, no hierarchy, no politics, no rank. It's just everyone has got something to bring to the party. When you put what you can bring to the party together, that's when you feel the effect of collaboration. And I believe that the only thing you need in order for collaboration to work really well is either a shared goal or a shared enemy. That's it. And I'm going to give you the example when the pandemic hit, that feeling when you're out on the streets, clapping for the NHS and the support workers and all that kind of thing, that feeling of camaraderie, that feeling that you're connected somehow to people on all corners of the planet with a feeling, with love, with support. That's an incredible thing. And that's the thing that once you've tasted, once you've felt, you never want to let go of. So you're always going to be chasing that. So that's why collaboration is really, really important to me, Darren.
I really appreciate that. And for anyone that hasn't seen the incredible TED Talk that Michelle did, I will link that so you could hear the story. So so you will be able to watch that, and please also give it a like and some support. Michelle, when we talk about kind of organizations that are, there are some organizations doing some incredible things to help towards, members of staff and things. And then there's organizations, and I see it as I know when I've spoken to some very large organizations before, and it's just a case of, it's normally around kind of October. My inbox kind of fills up around October, in the sense it's Dyslexia Awareness Week / month. We want to kind of we want to educate our team around dyslexia. Can you come in for a talk? And those conversations I think are brilliant. But I always say, well, actually, okay, so once you've done the talk, what is it you're going to be doing then? Because I always feel you're almost opening Pandora's box, in the sense that once you've done a talk, where's the support? What's going to happen? What's next? So I always think, whenever I talk to an organization, I'm saying, okay, so the talk is step one. What's your plan and your journey in that sense? Would you say that that's the kind of the right protocol or the right process when you're speaking to organizations?
Okay, because of my behaviour type, I am the kind of person that likes to give solutions. So what I always do in all of my talks is I give solutions. So when I delivered the Astonishing Advantages of the Neurodivergent, I delivered that at the NEC at the IHR conference only a couple of months ago. The people in that audience were amazing. We had talent acquisition managers, we had heads of people from all sorts of organizations, and these people are ahead of the game. They've already got teams set up to support people with neurodivergence and lots of different things that they're doing sterling work. But actually a lot of them were astonished that I was saying, look, just start with thinking about the environment, just start with thinking about how you empower these people, start by thinking what they bring to the party, rather than thinking what support do they need and what drain on our resources are they going going to be. And that was the feedback that I got from that talk. It's like, oh my gosh, you've actually given us things that we can go back and actually implement immediately without any cost at all. You know, changing the lighting and changing the heating and changing the environment isn't going to cost you a penny normally. So these are very simple things that you can start. And once you start, that builds onto other things. So I don't think you should ever deliver a talk. In my opinion, you should never deliver a talk, a keynote, a workshop, or anything like that without some steps for them to be able to implement immediately. It's the start of the journey.
Absolutely, and I guess it's trying to get their mindset into the sense that it's not just a tick box. It's not just a case of just bring someone in, have a chat, and even if you implement, you tell them, you ask, say, these are the strategies, and I think this is what you should implement. It's getting their mindset, isn't it, into how you can best, I guess, collaborate in the sense, because we I'm not saying all organizations, but they do. Okay, how can I support? How can I not make it a drain? How can I get Darren to work faster at this, or Darren to do that? Insert name this person, and it is that mindset of thinking, how can we support someone, rather than how can we not get sued if we were not being able to support someone. And I guess
I was so pleased that you had the kahunas to say that, Darren. Really, because that's exactly my thought process. People are going, how do I not get sued? How am I not going to get in trouble? What do I need to do in order to make sure? What's the limit, the minimum limit I can do to make sure that I don't get in trouble? And that's not the mindset of the forward-thinking companies. The forward-thinking companies are thinking, oh my gosh, we need some really intelligent problem solving. Let's proactively go out and find neurodivergence and attract neurodivergence, rather than thinking, oh, we've got to support them. So I think that the thought leaders in industry are on it like a car bonnet. It's a journey, isn't it?
I think, and thank goodness for these people that are, making headway and putting their head above the parapet to create enough awareness and talks around this, because otherwise we would still be in stalemate. I do feel, however, by speaking to lots of different individuals around job searching, and I still feel, even in 2024, we're still in that stage where, should I tick the box and declare that I have dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, ADHD? And I still feel, and again, this is just my pure opinion on this sense, that we don't know whether that is hindering to go to the next stage of the application or not. So I do feel that we are still, and I think the increase of AI, where a lot of applications are now being screened for, and they always say they won't use buzzwords and everything else, but the fact that now it's a lot of AI is used to screen these things, are people confident enough to tick that box? And if they are, is it going to, will it jeopardize? We won't know, because these people are on the other side of the fence when they're filling these applications. But speaking to people, when those questions come up, it's very difficult. Should I tick? Should I not?
Do you know what, Darren, that is such an insightful thing to bring up, because if you think about any discrimination, it's always been like that. Should I say it or should I not? But actually, this comes down to our mindset. So, when I was, many years ago, when I was in the Air Force, I'm a woman. Does that hinder me? Actually, no, it's an advantage in terms of me getting my corporals and my sergeant, because they have to fill the criteria of having a certain amount of women. We have to have a certain amount of diversity on a speaking panel, and this, that, and the other. So actually, I see it as a massive advantage. Yes, I have ADHD and I have all the superpowers that come with that, and that sets me aside from other people. But actually, if there are people that are still thinking, okay, we've got to show diversity, what have we got here that's diverse, and all the rest of it, it's kind of an advantage rather than a disadvantage. And I guess that comes down to the mindset. I mean, I've just applied for a Women in Innovation grant award, and please keep your fingers crossed for me. It would make a world of difference to what I'm trying to do on this planet, if I was successful in that. And I ask the questions: do you have people on the panel that are neurodivergent? Can I give you some feedback on the application process? And they were so beautifully open to it. Yes, we have people that are neurodivergent aware and have been on courses that are on the judging panel, and we're really open to hearing about how the application process might be changed to be more inclusive for neurodivergent. That's what I want to hear from all organisations, that beautiful acceptance and openness to say, yes, we're open to this, we're supportive.
And I feel absolutely, and I feel there are best of luck with the grant, honestly, and fingers crossed for that, because and this is the thing, there are so many grants out there for so many different things, and once when I hear of the possibility of getting that and the incredible changes in the work that you can do from this, and I think to myself, that's what ideally grants should be for. What an incredible thing you would be able to achieve from that. So I wish you the very best on that. The thought, just quickly going back to the application form side of it, I'm again just speaking from experience of speaking to many people. I'll give you an example. I shared on a LinkedIn post a while back of an individual that has applied for countless jobs, over 100 and something jobs, and each time they crafted their CV. They paid for some great people to help with the CV and their cover letter, and they had very, very heavily dyslexic, and they've had over 100 rejections that have come back, and they've tried different industries and different things, and it's very hard for someone. And each time, every single time, they tick the box to say that they have dyslexia and ADHD in this sense. So I'm not saying that those were the reasons behind it, because you can delve into it even more. Was it the right industry for that individual? Was whatever that looks like. But speaking to numerous different people, I feel it's an advantage. So if I was applying for a job, I would put this, because I feel confident in the sense of what I can bring to the table in that sense. But it's very difficult if someone is struggling to have that kind of mindset to think, well, actually, maybe next time I won't tick the box. And if I do get the position, how do I then declare it? How do I then do the job that is asked from me? And how do I get the support? And I guess that's, from a behavior point of view, I think that could put someone feeling, very unsure of themselves.
I think what you've hit on there, Darren, is the fact that we've got different behavior types doing different things. Now, if you have somebody that is a particular behavior type and wants to make sure that all the boxes are ticked, and that that this fits and that fits, and have very little flexibility, then that's not necessarily going to be advantageous. So the only thing that we can do with somebody that has been unsuccessful in 100 of those applications is to ask the reasons why. And one of the things that we can do is ask the question, what is your process in terms of filtering down and coming up with a shortlist? What is the process, and what do you have in place that takes on board a potentially neurodivergent application, and just make sure that they've got the right people in place. If you look at all the companies like Peregrine and Kia Group and Warwick University and Sainsbury's and all those wonderful companies that have got these teams set up, they have neurodivergent people heading those teams. So they have people with an insight that know what it's like. Let me give an example that is slightly different. It's not about a job application, but it is an application of sorts. So I've just created a partnership with CPD Standards Office, the CPD Standards Office, with the Professional Speaking Association. So now, if you're a professional speaker, you can get CPD accreditation as a speaker and a trainer for a fraction of what it would cost you if you were not in the Professional Speaking Association. Now, because I'm neurodiverse, I said, is there any, let me have a look at the process. There's a lot of paperwork there, and they immediately offered a free form process. So I went through the first part of this free-form process, and they literally just interviewed me and asked me the questions. And instead of me writing it down, they asked me the questions and typed it into the form. And then the person that was doing this for me said, "Oh, we need to do the second part now." I said, "You know what? That was easy. Leave it to me. I'll do the second part. It's a lot easier than I thought." And she said, okay, well, do the second part then. Oh my gosh, Darren, I came to the second part. And then I realised what the difference was. I started filling out the answers and I was like, but what does that mean? And should I put this or should I put that? And without the person there to actually guide me what it really means, actually, I was stumped. And I realised just how incredibly valuable that service was, that ability to be able to do that differently, and I see this with my own tools. I realize that some of my tools are not dyslexic friendly. That's absolutely so. I need to work with someone that's a dyslexic expert to be able to show me how to make those analyses more inclusive and get the best out of those people.
Quick word from our sponsors. Promova are a one-stop solution for all of your language learning needs. Now, we all know how difficult and challenging it can be to learn a new language, especially if you have dyslexia. Now, this is where they're different because they are the first platform to introduce a dyslexia mode. And I've got to tell you from firsthand experience, this has been an absolute game changer for me because I've tried to learn languages for many, many years before in different ways. But the fact that they're now making it available and to assist me in certain ways, I can work through these modules with ease. It has been an absolute game changer. Please do check them out. They are used by over 15 million people across the globe. So they are doing incredible work. There is a 50% discount on the premium version in the link below. Please do click on the link and start your learning language journey.
Picture this: mastering a new language in just 10 minutes a day. Too good to be true? With Promova, it's a reality. We are a one-stop solution for all your language learning needs. This innovative platform has all the tools to create a unique learning plan based on your goals and interests. With Promova, you can learn languages through bite-sized lessons, anywhere, anytime. Learn vocabulary you'll actually use in real life. Polish your speaking skills and train your ear with audio lessons. Dive into books for full immersion. Need some personalized guidance? Our expert tutors are just one click away, whether you prefer one-on-one or group lessons. Achieve your language learning goals with Promova.
How important is that for someone to understand their own kind of behaviors and where their strengths are? And I guess use terminology weaknesses or in that sense. But when you're kind of speaking to someone in what you've done, the incredible what you've done, what was the kind of steps look like for someone to understand that?
So I think there might be two questions there. The first question is how important is it for you to understand your own behaviour? I think this is the problem. A lot of people treat a behaviour profile and all of those kinds of analyses as a bit of a vanity tool. It's like, oh, it says some nice things about me, isn't that lovely? And then it goes into your drawer and nobody does anything with it. That's what you're doing wrong. When you do your behaviour profile, you should understand why you do what you do and how you are and what your preferences are, where you shine. So it should be an empowering tool, but also how others perceive you and the differences, so that you can then build rapport. And that's the most important thing. It's understanding where you are in terms of other people as well. So it's not just about understanding your own behaviour, it's about understanding how other people perceive that behaviour and the whole spectrum of how that can be different according to their behaviour profile. It's understanding how to build rapport with others. It's understanding where you shine and what you should just leave for somebody else to do so that you can play to your powers. And there's a 27-page report has got so much information about you, your strengths, how other people perceive you. As an example of that, people who are like me might see me as charismatic and enterprising and daring and exciting, whereas people with a different behaviour profile see exactly the same person, but they see someone who is loud, obnoxious, arrogant, scary. And that's purely because of the alchemy between the two behaviour profiles. That's what you have to understand, not your behaviour profile, but actually everyone's and how the alchemy works.
That's so fascinating. How do we then because I guess one of my traits, is what I feel people think about me, in the sense of, from a confidence point of view, in the sense of, doing the show for the Neurodiversity Stories. For instance, you could put it out, no one watches it, it doesn't work, it could fail, and then, you then think to yourself, oh my goodness, I'm failed. But then on the other aspect, you can think, well, actually, at least I gave it a go. And then, the other things that I've done, whether it's businesses, whether it's working for organizations, whatever it is, it's how do you get into that kind of mindset of, I guess, having that. I use terminology confidence because we mentioned that before, but how do we get into that mindset of not worrying what people think, but not letting it rule the decisions of you giving things a go, if that makes sense?
Again, I think it just comes back to understanding what your expertise is. If you are, and it's a journey. When I first started speaking, I was speaking about very different subjects. I started speaking at the turn of the century, but that was about marketing and business development and all of those kind of things. And then it was about how to communicate over the phone, and how to build rapport. And then it kind of developed. So, and now as a speaker, I am so utterly confident. I know that I'm such a safe pair of hands. There is not a single booking that will ever faze me and ever have me floored. And I have the confidence to know that. Why? Because I know my subject inside out. That's all it is. It's not about me. It's not about how big my bum is. It's not about whether I'm wearing the right dress. It's not about what people can leave that aside. The content is so good that everything, and so useful that everything else pales into insignificance. So if you know your subject, you've just got to have the confidence that if people aren't hearing it yet, they will. It's just, you've just got to find the right avenue.
Absolutely. What do you think organizations, and again, this is just, can start doing to, I guess, empower their teams? Because we're not just talking for, we're not just taking one or two individuals that are neurodiverse in their organization. We're looking at the whole organization of how we can collaborate and collectively work together. And that's that would be the beautiful kind of thing. What do you feel organizations can start doing to embrace that?
So I think, I'm always going to say that you need to understand who your people are. So as a leader and as a successful leader in the past, having, gained investors in people at only 3 years old, not me, my company, that'd be a bit mad, wouldn't it? So my company was only 3 years old when we gained investors in people. And that proves that actually I have this passion for understanding what my people in the organisation want, and what they need in order to be able to, to be fulfilled and to perform and everything else. So I only work with people passionate leaders. Those are the only people I'm interested in working with. If they're people passionate, I will work with them and I will help them unleash their people power. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to understand what it is that each individual brings to the party. So when you look at somebody that is neurodivergent, they will have some polar results in terms of what they're really good at and what they're really bad at. And they'll hold their hand up and say, please don't ask me to look at, to proofread your documents, because although I'm massively creative, I cannot spell. And what you're good at and what you're bad at. People that are not neurodivergent quite often will actually be a little bit more in the middle in terms of being able to switch to different things, but don't necessarily have something that is considered a superpower. And the reason I say superpower is because where it is on that spectrum from 0 to 100%, it's not up at 90%, it's more like down at 65, 70 or whatever. So that's when I talk about superpowers, I'm talking about these polar results. So when you have something that says, yes, Michelle is 100% friendly, for instance, it's going to show that I am 2% or 0% accurate. They're polar, so when I say superpowers, the superpower comes with an opposite, and if you don't have the superpowers, then maybe you're better at lots of things. It's I don't know if I've answered that at all.
No, you did. You answered it beautifully. Do you feel that that there is, I guess, some form? Let's say, for instance, someone does get a position within an organization, and they're, say I got a position in an organization, they said, okay, that's Darren, he's dyslexic, so we'll be able to do this, and he's ADHD, so we'll be able to hyper focus, so we can give him this amount of work and stuff. Do you feel that there could be, I guess, higher expectations? And this is the barrier, isn't it? Because we have some organizations that maybe say there's low expectations because they have dyslexia, for instance, or ADHD, or whatever this, whatever they want to kind of label in that sense. And then we have an organization that embraces someone with dyslexia and ADHD, but don't have the surroundings or the support on this sense. So we do have, a bit of a playing field in the sense that you could potentially go into an organization that are looking to employ more people or neurodivergent, but the expectation could be higher because they've read that if you're ADHD and you hyperfocus, then you'll be able to do X amount more work. So I guess it's what I'm getting at is trying to find that understanding, that balance of what works best for the individual within the organization. Am I right there?
Yeah, I think there's different things that you need to realise the most important thing for me when someone is joining the organisation is that the onboarding is good and solid, because that foundation is everything. And when you find that people haven't stayed with an organisation or they haven't excelled in an organisation, you can quite often look at the onboarding and see gaps there that weren't in place. So what we need to do is we need to understand from an individual point of view what drives that person, what do they need for fulfillment. You can't just look at the label and say, okay, this person has got, like you said, this person's ADHD, so they may fidget in a long meeting and they might not be able to sit down for very long, but they're going to hyper focus when they're involved in something. Actually, unless they're interested in it, they're not going to hyper focus. So you can't use those labels. So why don't you understand individually, Michelle, what is it that sets you on fire? What do you love doing? Well, I love creating new analyses. I love changing the world and showing people how brilliant they are and all that kind of stuff. And what don't you like doing? Well, I don't like doing spreadsheets. I can't read maps, and please don't ask me to spell check and all of that kind of stuff. So if you understand what drives those people and what those people think they're good at, go with that. Don't just go with the label of dyspraxia, this means such and such, Tourette's, this means such and such, or whatever. Those labels are they're guidelines. It's like behaviour profiling. Those labels are simply road signs. That's all they are. It gives us a bit of an insight. Everyone is individual and everyone has got capacity that is different to somebody else.
I think as well with this kind of there was a terminology trending for quite some time, and it was like it's like the quit culture or something like this, and it was about if you looked into it, I think a lot of kind of people wrote kind of papers on this, and it was around the younger generation not actually staying in an organization for a long for a long period of time because the culture doesn't work for them, or the surroundings in this sense. And so we are in a situation where we have kind of higher levels of staff turnover, people leaving an organization than they were back in my day, when you would join an organization, then it would be, well, that person's worked there for 30-40 years and then they retire. Do you think it's key now for more organizations to make the culture more inclusive and to make to really understand their people more now than, it was, don't get me wrong, it's important back then as well, but do you think it's just as important now to make sure the culture is right in an organization?
Yeah, I think people get the culture in an organisation upside down. What I've seen some leaders do is say, this is our culture, these are our values, you're either in it or you're not, and that's the wrong way around. Your culture is what your people are made up of. So it's the people in the organisation that tell you what the culture is, not the other way around. And actually, it's the same with values. There are so many companies that are trying to hire on values now, but actually they're asking the wrong questions. You don't ask someone I don't think you should ask someone what their personal core values are. You should actually just ask them whether they believe in your value and mission, because that's the important thing for you. Do you buy into my value and my mission and what we're doing as an organisation? If they do, then their personal core drivers and core values are nothing to do with you. Why? Because those are formed in your early years. So when we have these values that are formed, they're in the ages between 0 and 7. It's all to do with our culture, our backgrounds, our caregivers, our experiences, what we learned, what we were taught. So if you therefore, as a leader, say you must share our values if you want to join our organisation, that is the least inclusive thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And if you did that, you would never hire anyone outside of your own culture. That is not inclusive, Darren.